Good evening and welcome to this House of Musicians with your host, singer, songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board right now, send us an email. Our email addresses are thishouseofmusicians@gmail.com or instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your host of this House of Musicians, Barry Smith.
Hey, good evening, fine listener, and welcome to this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101. We hope you enjoy the next hour with us as we do our small part to help promote musicians, bands, and venues. Gary, how are you?
I'm peeing my pants.
No kidding. Absolutely stoked. It's our 50th radio show, Gary.
Congratulations, Barry. Very good. Very cool.
50.
Very
that
cool.
Went by quick.
And look,
50th show.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And look who we have on. I'll wait for you to announce this person, but I'm really excited about that as well. Beautiful.
Absolutely, man. I am stoked to have Brian Greenway on tonight's show, folks. Been with April Wine since 1977, known as one of the guys that came along and really, or the guy that came along and threw a lot of hard rock into the band of April Wine. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, Brian Greenway. How are you tonight, sir?
I am very good, thank you. How is everyone there?
Excellent, excellent.
We are doing quite well, and again, stoked to have you on the show, man. And I'll tell you why. I've been listening to your guitar leads 40 years, 45, I don't know, an awful long time, and still do, because you can't go anywhere without hearing Miles or April Wine or Brian Greenway playing Jim Henman on the first out. You just can't go anywhere without hearing you guys. If you're driving your car for an hour anywhere in Canada and in the States, you will hear April Wine. So I hear you guys all the time on the radio. Brian, let's start right at the very beginning. How you were influenced by music. Was it your folks? Was it an older brother with an album collection? And what kind of music were you listening to when you became influenced by music?
Well, we'll start back in, I guess when I was a kid. My mom and dad sang amateur opera. Now, I never knew that until later in life. When I became a teenager, my mom would be the soloist in the church choir.
Cool.
And she would, of course, that being said, I was also in the church choir.
Cool.
Because your son had to be there if you were there. And so I would listen. She had a very good voice. She sounded as good as any soprano I've ever heard, female soprano. She would practice in the house, and and I guess it got in my blood. Plus, them liking music when I was younger. I remember them having me in 1956 sit down in front of the old black and white TV and watch Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I was banging along in my little toy xylophone to the music. And I remember them telling me to be quiet because they couldn't hear it. So I guess I had a little bit of Elvis or something in me back then, And then I wanted to be a disc jockey for the longest time, which was still to do with music. I used to follow the AM station, the remote broadcaster out in Montreal, CKGM, and got to know the jocks when I was a kid. And then I wanted to be a drummer. When the Beatles came out, I wanted to be a drummer. That was like a good job. But I couldn't drum. And you had to have too many things if you were a drummer. You had to have a snare drum and sticks and a stand and a kick drum and a kick pedal. Just way too many things, Whereas a guitar, that's all you needed. just a guitar. Maybe, and later I found out an amp too, and a few other things like effects pedals and other guitars. You get the gas syndrome, gear acquisition syndrome as you get older as a musician and learn that there's much more out there.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
And then in 1965, we moved out to off the island of Montreal into Dollar Des Ormeaux. And there was a fellow across the street, Rocky Shea, who had a band called what were they? Not the Attic Dust. I forget. Anyway, they introduced me to blues. And in 1966, I heard Eric Clapton and John Mayall on the Blues Breakers album, and mm-hmm. was introduced to Paul Butterfield. And I started getting into blues. And it just sort of changed it. I remember seeing my first blues band. I went to the Hampton YMCA, and there was a top 40 pop band on. And then this long-haired blues band came on. The guy had a homemade fuzz box in a cigar box. And within this book, the third song, I was mesmerized. And when the top 40 band came on again, it was like listening to Dust. And then when the blues band came, when the blues band came back on, I was like, oh yeah, this is music. And I guess British blues was like British rock. A lot of it was rock blues became an entity, and my style adapted that way. And maybe that's one of the reasons why some people say that, no, I gave April Wine a harder edge.
Correct. Yes. Well, that's like the Cream days, Clapton and Jack Bruce and those guys, that was the beginning of that stuff too, as well.
Oh, I ate that all up, and Hendrix. And oddly enough, I wasn't a big Zeppelin fan when they first came out.
Right.
And it was the same thing with U2. I wasn't a big fan of them when they first came out. There was just something there that I didn't quite get, like everybody else was getting. But I got Butterfield and Mayall in that right off.
Sure. Yep, they had the blues in your soul. So how old were you, Brian, when you got your first guitar? And how did you get it?
I bought it on my birthday, my first electric guitar in 1965 for $30. It was a Belltone secondhand from a fellow that was selling it just up the street from me, which I don't know whatever became of it. Probably nothing. It's probably just faded away into dust. But I played that, and the strings are really hard to play on it. But that's what I learned my open chords on. I took lessons from Cliff Randall. He was in a band called Cliff Randall and the Randells, and he had a wonderful Telecaster and a Fender Bandmaster amplifier, and they sounded incredible. He showed me my open chords, and the rest I just learned myself from watching other musicians and bands and listening to records. I don't read a note of music, Can't write a note of music. I don't read it. Everything I play, I just remember in my head.
That's amazing. And of course, back then there was no go to YouTube and learn anything you want. There was nothing like that. You had to work hard and put on an album and slow it down to 33, or at least pick the needle up and listen to it 10 times before, to get each note kind of.
Yeah, or just run it with your finger.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wore out a lot of records that way. I just finished learning something that it was actually from 1965 with John Mayall and Eric Clapton from what became the Beano album, a song that Freddie King wrote called Hideaway, and the John Mayall Eric Clapton version. It was like a bucket list thing. So I spent 2 months learning it note per note, but this time I had a device called iRehearse that you could take the song and slow it down to 26% without losing the pitch.
Wow.
And set it into sections just to repeat, and that's it. And being the age I am, boy, it took a long time to have this old dog learn a new trick.
Well, it's not like when we're 16 and you could learn, Whole Lot of Love or Cream Song like nothing. Now, as you get older, it takes a little longer.
It sure does, because you come back down the next day and try to remember it.
Well, let me ask you this. Oh, I know, the next day. Yeah. Let me ask you this. If you got on stage tomorrow with Miles and the boys, would you be able to do every April Wine song note for note, do you think? Or is there some of that you forgot as well?
I think I could.
Yeah.
In fact, I know I could. It would just be like we haven't played in a long time, longer than usual. And I would probably have the same, all of a sudden, oops, I forgot about that lick, or that passage. And an hour before the show or just before the song started, go, well, what was that? And just try to fake it. But I think we could get through it.
Oh, I'm sure you could.
We call those train wrecks.
Right.
It sort of falls apart. We've never had to stop.
Well, at the point you guys are all at now is you come out on stage and play a wrong note, everybody will cheer louder. I mean, that's just, you guys have that reputation. Legendary band. So do you remember, Brian, the first time you got on stage and played? Let me ask you this first. Do you remember the first song you learned on the guitar?
It was probably House of the Rising Sun.
Cool. As many other people. Yes, that's very cool.
It involved, 4 chords, 5 chords.
Yeah.
And the toughest one being the F, because you had to use 2 fingers one finger for 2 notes. If you played F that way, if not a bar chord, then learning bar chords were a lot of people learning how to play ran into trouble and decided, nah, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, they give up, right, or whatever. But so the first time you played on stage, was it with a band? Was it at high school? Something I'm interested to know.
There was a band called the Four Sounds in Montreal West, and we played the same day I bought that guitar in 1965. We got paid $10, and there was 3 of us: a drummer and a bass player and 2 guitar players. And we had 1 amplifier, no PA, and 1 mic. And the mic wouldn't, you couldn't have everybody play at the same time if you were going to sing. So we played our 5 or 6 songs, and then somebody held the mic for me because we forgot it needed a mic stand. And one of the guys didn't play. We plugged the mic in the amp, and I sang the 10 songs over again. And we all dressed in a little uniform with a dark blazer, a white turtleneck, and powder blue pants.
Of course, it was like the Fab Four kind of thing.
Oh yeah! Then we went up to the Burke's Drugstore in Montreal West on Westminster Street, and tried to act out a Beatles scene from Hard Day's Night, and at that point there was a lot of greasers, American Graffiti style people, still very prevalent. And I remember some guy with a white T-shirt with his cigarettes in his sleeve, like a Fonzie guy, say, it's the Suck Boys Hard Club.
That's the way it was back in those days.
Yeah.
My dad had a ducktail. He's from Newfoundland. He had the ducktail.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was an art to do that, It was, and way pre-Trump as far as how to do interesting things with your hair.
Absolutely. Take forever to get it done, for sure. Lots of grease.
If you had curly hair, forget it,
Yeah, right. Brian, so now let's talk about, so you're a teenager, you played, you talked about when you first came out and played, I guess, in front of somebody.
We didn't open so much until I got into Cheek in 1968. We would open for some bands, at a high school or at an amusement park or something. Or with Mash McCann, when I joined the second edition of Mash McCann in '72, we would open up for April Wine in the Maritimes.
That's crazy. So you opened up for April Wine.
Yeah, In fact, remember one night in Moncton, I went up and introduced them. I was the MC before they started, and I forgot Jimmy Clench's name.
Oh, did he ever forgive you?
Oh yeah. It was just one of those brain cramps,
We all have them, that's for sure.
I was always trying to be funny and be outlandish, and sometimes it got me into trouble.
No kidding. So let's talk about, super powerhouse rock band, huge in Canada, huge in the States, probably all over the world. How did you hook up? So did you actually know Miles and the boys before? I know you said you emceed, introduced them up on the stage, but did you know them before you joined the band?
Yes. Well, when they came up to Montreal in 1970, it was the two Henman brothers, David and Richie.
Yeah.
And Miles, of course, and Jim Henman, very briefly. So it was three Henmans, but then Jim Henman decided, no, he didn't want to do this. So they got Jimmy Clench in the band very fast. So that's the first edition I saw of April Wine at a snowed-in indoor multi-act show in Quebec City back in 70.
Wow.
They went on at 4:00 in the morning. This was an all-nighter. Yeah. There was no cigarettes available. Everybody ran out of beer, and the only thing to smoke was weed.
Why not?
Everybody got sick of that.
That's a late gig.
And we couldn't go anywhere because it was a snowstorm. We were snowed in.
So yeah. I guess you guys just kept playing and playing then.
Well, there was 6 or 7 bands, so they just kept on rotating. And that was the first time I saw April Wine, and I said, there's something different about that, because they were playing their own songs.
Yeah,
everybody else was doing covers. And then in 1973, well, we toured with Mash McCann opening, so I got to know them. But Gary Moffat I'd known. I'm getting ahead of myself. In 1973, the Henman brothers left, and Gary Moffat and Jerry Mercer joined April Wine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jerry I hadn't really known, even though I had been in Mash McCann without him. Gary I'd known through other bands around Montreal. And then in 1975 or 76, Steve Lang replaced Jim Clench on bass. And I played with Steve Lang and Cheek in 1968 and in Mash McCann in 1972. So that was the third. Yeah. And we used to hang out in Point Claire at night, this bar, this notoriously infamous bar called the Maples Inn. And they had live entertainment 7 nights a week. During its heyday in the 30s and 40s and 50s, it had big bands. And actually, my father even hung out there. It was quite the place. But it had grown old, and it had lost its place in suburbia. And I ran into Steve Lang there one night in May of 1977, and he said, "Had Miles called you yet?" And I said, "No. Why would Miles call me?" And he says, "Oh, he wants you to join the band for the summer tour." And so I waited for his call for 3 days, and he did call, and I went down and we talked, and I joined for the summer tour on the provision if I worked out, I would become a member. In 1973, when Gary Moffat had joined the band after the Henmans left, I went down to talk with Miles, and I was interested in the job too, but Gary Moffat got it instead, which in hindsight I thought was the proper choice after hearing what records came out of that foursome. They would have been different had I been there, because Gary had some beautiful parts that he manufactured and came up with.
So interesting, yeah.
So when I joined, we called it 3 guitars, no waiting.
So that was 77.
That was 77, yeah. But at that time, bands were coming up with 3 guitars so they could, harmonies, guitar harmonies were becoming very popular. And we just fit into that bill, and it became powerful to the point where with three guys, didn't all have to play at the same time. You know, Miles could play during the verse, and Gary could embellish, and I come in for the chorus, and boom, boom, boom.
Sure.
You know, it was, or all together we could do something crazy like in the harmonies in Gypsy Queen or Roller. Yeah.
Yeah, Roller's really popular for that three-piece guitar harmony for sure. It's just killer. And there's sections in there where not only do you take turns, but they're two-beat turns, or see what I'm saying? One-beat turn. Guitar right away. It's very cool.
Yeah, we weren't content to just let things be normal. We said, okay, let's make it as messed up as we can, you know. So like you said, and it was tough to learn sometimes. It kept you on your toes.
Yes. But what great sound! What great sound came out of that, Brian? What's your? Now we're going to play a couple April Wine songs, and you just rip and shred in these April Wine songs on the guitar. But what guitar do you prefer to play? What's your brand?
Well, back in those days when I was recording all those records, I had my Gibson Les Paul Custom, which I bought new in '72. And I still have it. It's going to be 50 years old next year. And I just been playing it for the past couple of months here at home. I won't take it out the house because I don't want it to get stolen, and I don't want to fly it. And we pretty much fly everywhere. So if I lost it, I would be really sad.
Yeah.
Although it's very unique, it's relicked so well just from use. It's one of a kind. You know, you couldn't redo that unless you made a copy of it. I remember one time we played, when I was playing with it, we played with Bad Company, and their guitar tech wanted to know how we relicked the guitar to look so old, and our guitar tech told him, well, he just plays it.
Right, of course. That's what everybody does nowadays. They try to make relics. Yep, sanding them down and stuff.
Well, I actually own two Fender Custom Shop relics, master builds that I just they're worth a lot of money, but they also ended up being like guitars used to be made in the 50s and 60s, early 60s. They were made really well and personal. And I got them relic because they just looked good and felt good. So they blended in, and also you're not afraid of using it because you're not going to get a scratch on it that's not already there, unlike a brand new car.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you get a scratch on it, that's for sure. But I've never been able to play a guitar enough to relic it. I'm wondering how many times or how many hours you have on. I believe you said it was a Les Paul, right? Yeah. How many hours do you have on that darn thing to look relic and be worn down?
I don't remember. I know where my arm would go across the body, where my palm would mute the strings. The paint wore off it right down to the wood.
That's cool.
The back of the neck, all the paint and varnish is worn off right down to the wood. There's marks, chunks into the body where the pick had hit it so many times. Dings on the back belt, the belt buckle mark.
Cool.
I stopped using that probably around 2005, and I went to Fender because I wanted to take the guitar off the road because I didn't want to lose it, like I said. So then I went through a few Telecasters and many Stratocasters until I came across the Eric Clapton version of the Stratocaster, which had a whole different wiring system than any other Stratocaster. Instead of having two volumes and a tone, it had a volume, tone, and then a 25 dB mid-range boost, which brought it up in somewhere near the territory of a humbucking pickup on a Les Paul.
Oh, okay.
So I'd been missing that on the other Strats. It just wasn't getting there. So that became my guitar.
Yeah, so that's the one that now is this the guitar that you would have used up till COVID started?
Yes. Yeah. It was a light. They call it a Mercedes blue Fender. Once again, it's a custom shop, not a master built, but I say, hey, if it gets stolen, I can replace it. Compared to the Les Paul, if I get stolen, I can't replace it. You know?
That's right. And you know what? Let's face it, we're not getting any younger. The fenders are a little lighter when you're on stage for 2 hours.
They are. and I like the way they conform to the body better with the contour in the back. That
yeah,
90-degree edge in the Les Paul way would stick into your gut and ribs and hurt you after a while.
Yeah, the Fender's got the belly cut out. Yep.
The belly cut out. Yeah, some guys have done that with the Paul, but I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to ruin the guitar, because once it's done, you can't put it back. You know, it just becomes sawdust.
Absolutely, and you know,
I also like the neck on the Fender too, the V neck and the blonde neck. It had an interesting feel to it, and the scale is shorter, I think, or longer. I forget which one than the Les Paul. It was easier to play. The strings weren't as much tension.
Okay, yeah, and the maple necks. I find the maple necks are a lot easier, smoother to play than the rosewood. Yeah, although I love rosewood necks, I don't know. Me personally, I think the maple necks are easier to play.
Well, I thought it was easier, but one of the main things that stood out, I found it easier to see on stage. It wasn't as dark.
Yeah, true enough.
I could see where my fingers were, on what fret, and okay.
Good point.
And they do sound a little brighter, but that's easy to take care of with tone,
Sure, absolutely. Brian, I want to play a song. I want to play an April Wine song that you shred in here. But first, before we do that, let me read a couple emails because they are coming in left and right here. I had one before the show started from Fret P. And Fret said, hello, I just had to write in early to your radio show since I have to work tonight. Brian and April Wine is the epitome of what Canadian rock music was to people around the world. In the late 70s, April Wine or Triumph was signature sound from Canada when a song hit the airwaves. I was in the U.S. at the time, and when a song by April Wine came on the radio, wow, we all thought of Canada. What music! Thank you for the memories. I still get chills thinking about Canada when I hear a song by April Wine, and now I live in Alexander, Manitoba. So that's from Fret. Thank you for the email, Fret.
Well, that's awful nice of Fret, and he is going to get some chills living in Manitoba.
No kidding. A lot of them for a long time over the winter.
That's such a nice thing for him to say. Thank you.
Larry Wright says, loving it. Great guest. Love April Wine's music. Such hits. Every song meant something to me, as it did to all of us. Nice work. A pleasure. That's from Larry. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
We have
thanks
one
for taking
from.
The time.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to email in. Here's one from. I'm going to say this is W-A-Y-N, Dwayne. It was spelled differently. Dwayne P. says, Brian, what's your favorite April Wine song?
Ooh.
Now, there's two ways you can go with this. There's what's your favorite April Wine song to listen to on your Bose headset, or what's your favorite April Wine song to play live?
Well, to play live, I used to love doing Schizoid Man and or Gypsy Queen, signed the Gypsy Queen. Because in the heydays, the Gypsy Queen was a real production song with the dry ice and the lights and everything. And Schizoid Man was just fun to play because you could improvise a lot. To listen to, I have the luxury of being in the band and being able to listen to songs when I wasn't in the band. And I'm not so cynical or critical of them because I had nothing to look. I wasn't on it, so I can't say I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. The Forever for Now album is beautiful. I love Charles Garden, the song Charles Garden, or Victim of Your Love. Those songs just sound classically great to me. I just love the production. But listening to stuff I've been on, it's. I think every musician would say that it's hard to listen to your own stuff, and it's hard to listen to music, period, because you're always picking out and zeroing in on little things in songs, rather than the person that doesn't play an instrument, who's never been in the studio, that doesn't know how it's put together. You're more critical of your own stuff.
Way more critical of our own stuff, for sure. No doubt about that. I have a couple more emails, but I'm going to do them after, folks. So hang in there, and I will read these emails. But first, I want to play a song, like I said, that you shredded on, Brian. This is a song called Ooh, What a Night. And then, so let's just go ahead and play the song, and then we'll discuss it when we come back. How does that sound, Mike?
That sounds fine.
Awesome, man. Folks, I have Brian Greenway on the show. This is our 50th radio show, and we couldn't have a better guest to help us celebrate 50 radio shows, this House of Musician radio shows. Again, I have Brian Greenway on the show, hard rock man from April Wine since 1977. And we're going to hear a song, again, that he's ripping his guitar in. This song's called Oh, What a Night on this House of Musicians radio show right here on Reality Radio 101.
Gonna
Hey, welcome back, folks. We are absolutely stoked on this 50th celebration of our radio show to have Brian Greenway on tonight's guest. Brian, oh, what a night. Talk to me about that song and your guitar playing in it.
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but I wasn't on that song.
Oh,
that is one of the songs, like I said, was done before I joined the band.
right.
And I'm a big hit of it, and a good friend of mine who passed 4 years ago, or maybe probably more, Jim Clench wrote that. And it's one of the better known April Wine live songs.
Sure.
So that would have been Miles and Gary and Jerry and Jim Clench.
Well,
you know?
don't I feel foolish now?
No, you don't. No, I didn't. Well, I didn't want to go on there and say, "Oh yeah, I did this and that," and someone say, "No, you didn't. You sound like a politician now."
Let's talk about the cowbell at the beginning.
It's a fire bell. Yeah,
Fire bell.
It's a red fire bell, and it's about, I guess, 10 inches in diameter, and it was stolen from a high school gym for Jerry as a joke to play on, and it became such a hit right away. They used it on "Ooh, What a Night," but there was a certain way you had to hit it and a certain way you had to mic it to get that tone. Because I've known with my blues bus band that I do, well, when we all used to play a few years ago, I got the drummer a bell and I had to teach him how to play it properly, how to hit it so we get that tone. Mm-hmm. He got a bell first, but it wasn't the right size, so I got a red one, and it had to be red. I think red is the color, of emergency,
Right.
And it just people just come alive when we play that song. Like, "Ooh, what a night!" The ding ding song,
The ding ding song. As soon as that bell starts up, everyone goes crazy.
Yeah, and April Wine has seen Jimmy sing it when he was in the band, and then Steve Lang sing it, and Miles sing it when he wasn't in the band, and then after he died, I started singing it, trying to get as close to Jimmy as I could, which Jimmy had a rare and unique voice. You could almost see blood when he sang. He would push himself so hard.
That's awesome. So let's talk about this, Brian. In '91, you had a 1 hour long TV special entitled Brian Greenway and Friends. Talk about that for a little bit. That's exciting.
Well, that was from my ill-fated solo album, Serious Business. That had some great people on it. It had everything happening for it. It had a great management out of New York with Bud Prager, who was handling Benny King and Foreigner at the time. The Marty Simon from who I'd known here in Montreal. He played in bands when I was a kid, and a great drummer. He played on I think it was Walking Through Fire album we did with April Wine towards the end of the breakup, and then he signed me up to him, and then he sold me to Bud Prager, and the next thing we know, I was writing songs, and Andy Newmark was playing drums with them, and Alba Nola was on it, and people from Corey Hart's band were on it. We're recording it in the studio, and the songs were good. The initial reaction was really good, and then Atlantic said, "No, we're going to sit on the album for 6 months, and then we're going to release it in Canada first." And I wasn't signed to anybody in Canada, so it ended up in Wea's lap, and they didn't have the budget for me. So Atlantic fulfilled their commitment as far as they released it everywhere, but they didn't promote it. So the thing died a horrible death, like a lot of records do. And it just became a political ploy that didn't work out, in the record business. A lot of money was spent.
Yeah, that's a shame. That does happen quite a lot.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. Well, I do know what happened. I don't want to say it on the air, but it was just political. It was set up. It had, just like an election, had this person got this job, position, it would have been great, but it didn't happen, and so it didn't happen.
Right. Well, I know, Brian, that you've written a few songs with April Wine. What is your creative writing process? I know for me, I will pick up my guitar and put a couple of riffs on my phone. I probably have 100 on there now, and then maybe come back to them a few weeks later and listen to a few riffs that I've already pre-recorded. And if I like them, I'll turn them into a song if I still like them. What's your creative writing process? And what songs have you written with them?
Well, my writing process sort of involves just a lot of, oh, that sounds interesting. And like you, and nowadays you can actually just whip out your phone and say, hey, Siri, record this. And I'll just play it like you, come back to something, and sometimes I'll finish it. I've got a lot of stuff left over from songs that I wrote in the 80s that I transferred from cassette to ADAT, now to digital, into Logic, and I want to go through them and see if there's any little gems in there that could be part of something else. I'll take a riff and I'll just play on it and see what happens, and then something like Before the Dawn just popped out of me in 20 seconds, music and lyrics. And I said, where did that come from? You know, I wish I had more. Wish I had more of those.
Yeah.
And another songs I've been working on for years. You know, that like a lot of other artists, they'll just sit there in the can, and you'll take them out every now and then and improve it a bit or change it a little bit, and then you'll start thinking about it again, or think of a part for it with something else, and then what starts out as one thing ends up as another.
Absolutely.
On Back to the Mansion, I had two songs called, one of them was In Your World, and another one was called Holiday. And they were very different songs that I was used to writing. I was going through different changes, and I still am. I listen to a lot of Mark Knopfler music now. You know, if people say, if you could only take one artist with you to a desert island, who would that be? And I would say Mark Knopfler, because he's got so many different things that you never get tired of, you know?
Yeah, cool. That's interesting.
And I've trended towards that with J.J. Cale and I always loved Little Feat. Yeah. I'm not really a rocker, you know. I don't listen to rock music too much. I listen to a lot of country because I love the arrangements and the production and the musicianship. That old country, not today's country so much, because I don't know what happened to country music. But in the mid 2000s, there was some great stuff out there with Alan Jackson and Brad Paisley. I love listening to these guys. These guys can rock. You know, I saw Brad Paisley whip off a Van Halen song in one of his shows, and it was note for note and perfect. You know, this guy's a real talent.
Oh, big time. Great singer, great songwriter, and great guitar player. He's got it all. I know I like the old Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash stuff. And like you say, Alan Jackson and Travis Tritt and that stuff back when that happened. But now it seems, and you know, I don't want to knock music that people love out there, but today's country, you can't really tell, at least for me, you can't tell apart who's singing. Like you can't tell the songs apart, really. They're just so commercially pop. It's unbelievable nowadays.
Well, it's become format, you know, even cowboy rap. It's very big with people, and it's just that I'm of the age, as well as you, that we don't understand it. It's not. We're not of that age. We don't my stepson's living with us during COVID. He's 26, and I get to see all his views on the world, you know, which is so different than mine when I was 26.
Sure.
But then again, my views were different of my parents when I was 26. So it's the big circle of life. I can complain about the music. Who's gonna listen? Except your listeners right now. But I mean, it's not my feelings. My feelings are different than I was at 26. I don't have that angst and suddenness of something that I want, and that's reflected in the music of that age group. And it always was and always will be.
Right. Yeah. Just different generations. It's always the same. Yep.
Yeah. And technology drives it. Just when the synthesizers first came out, all of a sudden guitars disappeared and synths were everywhere. And whoever got the coolest sound on a synth would have a hit with it.
Yeah.
What's Love got to do with it? With Tina Turner, that became a big hit. The sound of it, the sound, the technology would drive the type of music, like the cars.
Absolutely.
And it was very basic stuff, synth stuff. You're all I got tonight, and it was very different. And all of a sudden, us heavy arena rock bands would go, "What's this shit?"
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so much music nowadays too doesn't really involve studio musicians and stuff. It's basically a singer, with lots of computer-generated sounds and stuff. There's a lot of that going on as well.
Yeah, but even if you look back at all the big hits that we liked as kids, they were all done basically by the same musicians, with the Wrecking Crew and the Muscle Shoals Gang, and out of L.A. with Carol Kay and Hal Leonard, Hal Blaine. They were cutting all these songs that they could do them quickly and fast, and they sound good. Not many bands were playing their own stuff. The Beatles were one of the first bands to do that.
Right.
Singer-songwriters, you could be a great musician or singer in the 40s and 50s, but other people were writing the songs. They didn't expect you to be able to sing and write.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This is even where Alan Jackson had trouble getting into Nashville, because he could also write, but he's also singing. And you just didn't do that. You had to include the songwriters. It's a union thing. You got to have this and that. Everybody should supply here. You can't come and do it all. Yeah.
No, that's right. And what a story. So we were talking about Alan Jackson. I believe that him and his wife made a pact to move to Nashville. And if nothing happened in 5 years, they were going to move back home and live their regular life. And I think near the end of the 5 years, he hit. And look what happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Well, he was one of those guys that tall and good looking and had a deep voice and was writing
great songs
about, that's what I like about country music. They write about life. Yeah. Not about crap,
Like home, Alan Jackson's Home. Holy smokes.
Yeah. I mean, I like the songs that Bob Dylan wrote and then Hendrix did and Led Zeppelin and all the big rock acts. There was some stories there, not but then again, I got old, and those stories didn't matter anymore. So,
right, that's a great point. Brian, I know you guys were playing in Halifax, April Wine, right up till COVID started. Any talks with Miles about maybe reuniting in the future, or did you already have more gigs planned?
Oh, we had a great 2020 planned. We had about 40 shows that we were doing, and every one of them got postponed or canceled. And we're going to try to do some of them later this year, but with this third wave happening and the vaccination not going as fast as people wanted to, and people getting tired of here in Quebec, we have a curfew. We've got to be indoors by 8 o'clock in some areas or 9:30 in other areas. Otherwise, you get a $1,500 fine.
Wow.
You're allowed to walk your dog as long as you're no more than a kilometer from your house and you have a live dog.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, man, I hope that you and Miles and the boys continue to tour. I had Miles on the show as well, and I know he's doing blues albums right now. Fabulous voice. Never lost his voice over all these years. Just an amazing singer and songwriter. So it would be fabulous, man, if you guys got back out and did some April Wine stuff. I certainly hope that happens.
We planned on it. We just turned down a drive-in show in Toronto for August because he lives in Halifax. I live here. Roy lives in Cornwall. And it's a matter of traveling by air for Miles. And he's a diabetic. And with COVID, he's a risk. He doesn't want to risk himself. And I don't
Can't
really
blame them.
happy. I drive because my mom lives in Kingston, Ontario, so I could see her and still go to Toronto. But I wouldn't want to stay in a hotel.
No.
It's too early. So maybe later this year, if not next year.
Yep, for sure. It'll be eventually, that's for sure. I got an email from Bonnie. Let's go back to this email. Bonnie says, hey, Brian is quite the harp player. Can he tell us more about how he started to play harp?
Oh, I sort of picked it up as part of the blues thing. Actually, it was part of the Beatles thing, too, with John Lennon playing harmonica. And I just thought it was fun to play, and I was a big fan of James Cotton. A great harmonica blues, such a huge tone he had. And I never reached there, but I would do my own version of how I did it. And like everybody does, they eventually create something with what they can play. It was just, I don't know, I just learned to listen and taught myself and learn trial and error,
Absolutely. Sure. And have you played?
They called it suck and blow,
Have you played on any recordings have you played harp on any of them?
No. Although live, I play the harp on Rockin' with a Vicious Game, but in the studio we use Jim Zeller, who's a great harmonica player from Montreal. That's
awesome.
And by learning his parts, I learned a lot too. And in the blues bus, by 5-piece blues band I had before COVID, actually Gary Moffat was in the band for about 2 years of that. And then he had a hand injury that he just couldn't play too much anymore because he likes playing acoustic guitar, and the electric guitar playing was making his hand sore too much. But we have a great harp player named Craig Miller from Chicago, and he's been teaching me a little bit how to do it. It all comes from the lungs, that tone. It's like the guitar comes from the fingers and the hands. The harp comes from the lungs and the
right,
diaphragm.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had Harp Dog Brown on the show, and what a harp player that fellow is. Holy smokes.
Oh, no kidding, yeah. I really appreciate these harp players because they're really working hard.
They sure are. That's a lot of breathing.
And you've got to know so much about the music because it's, somebody will show up for a jam and say, oh, can I play? I have a harmonica.
Yeah.
Well, what key? What key is that harp? I've seen Craig use 3 different keys for one song.
Wow.
And he's got harps in between his fingers. He'll use this for that and a minor for this part. And he tells me stories about some people even do more than that. I go, wow, that's something.
Absolutely. Brian, I'm going to go a little late tonight because I still want to play a song and I want to ask you one of my favorite questions that I like to ask artists. But let's go ahead now. I know you're shredding in this next song.
Yes.
Yeah. And you do a lot of it in this next song. So let's go ahead and play the next song for the folks out there. Folks, I have Brian Greenway on the show this evening. Huge April Wine guy. And has been with April Wine since 1977. We're stoked. It's our 50th show. I keep repeating myself, but we're stoked to have Brian on the show. So let's go ahead and listen to Sign of the Gypsy Queen, where Brian really is ripping it on this one. Right here on this House of Musicians Radio on Reality Radio 101.
Smokes on the hill rise, like the man with the warning light, shouting loud you had better fly, while the darkness can help you hide. Trouble's coming without control, no one's staying who's got a hold. Hurricane at the very least, in the words of the Gypsy Queen. Gypsy Queen, pack your things and leave. Word of a woman who knows saddle and tied on. Western wind is fast and strong. Jump up back is good and long. We'll resist till we reach the dawn. Running seems like the best defense. Staying just don't make any sense. No one could ever stop it now. Show the cards of the gypsy town. Sign of the gypsy queen. Pack your things and leave. Word of a woman who knows. Take all your gold and you go. Shadows moving without a sound from the hold of the sleepless town. Evil seems to be everywhere. Heed the spirit that brought despair. Trouble's coming without control. No one's staying that's got a hold. Hurricane at the very least. In the words of the gypsy queen. Sign of the gypsy queen. Pack your things and leave. Word of a woman who knows. Take all your gold and you go. Sign of the gypsy queen. Pack your things and leave. Word of a woman who knows. Take all your gold and you go. Sign of the gypsy queen. Pack your things and leave. Word of a woman who knows.
Hey folks, welcome back to our 50th radio show celebration this evening. We have the amazing Brian Greenway, possibly one of the best guitar players in Canada. Brian, Sign of the Gypsy Queen, man, oh man, what a famous song. What guitar did you use the Gibson on that song, and what effects did you use?
I did use a Gibson, the Les Paul, through the Marshall. I don't know what model. It might have been in 1959.
Cool.
With one cabinet, two cabinets, plus we did this at the Manor Studios in Oxford, England, with Mike Stone producing.
Amazing.
And he put some, I guess, effects on it from the rack. Sounded like chorus. I was always using a lot of chorus. And that was about it. I had the Boss CE1 chorus pedal, and that was my only pedal I was using back then.
Amazing.
I was addicted to it. I could not play without it. And that song, I remember saying to Miles, I said, please let me do the solo on this. I just feel it.
Cool.
I really wanted. He says, well, let me see. And while I was doing it with Mike Stone in the studio, Miles would come in with plastic grapes in his pocket. And just, so how's it going? How's it sound? Just messing with us, right? Oh, yeah. But it worked out real well. It's years later, looking back, I can think of those memories doing it, you know, in that room, in that old studio that Richard Branson owns in the middle of nowhere, really, in Shipton-on-Cherwell, outside of Oxford, England.
Absolutely.
The place was really built in the 1400s, but everybody was recording there.
Right.
So we went. You know, I'd like to wish you and Gary a happy 50th birthday on the Reality Radio 101, the House of Musicians. That's 50 shows.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian.
Well, very, very kind of you. Thank you so much for saying that, Brian. I have an email here I want to read real quick. This is from Dave. Dave's a great friend of mine, and he writes in my teens and 20s, I used to really look forward to seeing April Wine at the C&E Grandstand. Those shows, that venue holds a very special place in my heart. Does the C&E or any venue in particular hold a special sentimental value to you, Brian?
Well, there's the Montreal Forum, our first show there, where we had a small riot outside. And then the second time we played there, headlining, we did 2 nights, which was kind of fun. The C&E was always fun. When the old grandstand, you could get about 25,000 people or so in there. I remember that sold out, and that was a real special show. And my family was there. My dad was there when he was alive. That was wow. Those are special moments, you know, that you remember. We played there in 2019, and we had a lot of people again, but it wasn't the same venue without the grandstand.
Right. Well, I can imagine how proud your father would have been of you for sure, and your family. That's just amazing. Yeah,
it was. How can I say? I told you I could do this.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's not just because my stepfather say I just wanted to have a real job. You know, I said, well, I'm trying to make this a real job. And back then, the world was a different place where people would work for one company all their life and retire and get a pension. Now that doesn't happen anymore. So I'm still doing what I did. So my job hasn't changed. We always got paid weekly, very weekly, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just a little more playing for the bigger shows, which is great.
Just a little more, bigger shows, bigger production, more expenses. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Brian, this is one of my favorite questions I love to ask all the artists that come on the show. Tell me a crazy story that's happened to you on stage, on a plane, on the bus, touring in another country. Just tell me a crazy story.
Well, there's a lot of them.
I think there is.
We had a fella from Scotland, Barry Williamson, I believe his name was. Tall fella with a huge Scottish brogue. He was our tour manager in Germany, and we would get stopped by the police on the Autobahn because apparently buses can't go as fast as cars. You're not allowed to. And the German police didn't speak any English, at least that we know of. And Barry looked at the cops and said, "Of all the wankers I've ever met, mate, you guys take the cake." And I said, "Oh God, we're all going to get arrested." But the German police just smiled and said, "No, I'll be the same." And another time, we were touring with Nazareth in the Midwestern United States, and once again a Scottish story. Scots have the best stories. You look at Billy Connolly, right? He sitting with Danny McCafferty, the singer from Nazareth, who a voice like gravel, and even when he's talking, it's very difficult to understand. And this young Farrah Fawcett style hairdo waitress in the 80s came to our Holiday Inn atrium by the pool table and asked what we want. And Danny ordered, and it was like he was speaking he was speaking a foreign language to her, I suppose. So I conveyed that he wanted a hamburger and some French fries with a Coke. And I said, "Don't worry, he's from Scotland, and that's why you can't understand him." So when she came back with his Coke, she said, "Well, you're all from Scotland. How come everything on your T-shirt's written in English?" Moments like that, you go, huh? And then there's other things that have happened that you can't really talk about live on air.
Of course not.
And commit to tape because then you have skeletons in the closet.
Absolutely. No, you don't want to release those. That's for sure. I got an email from Joyce, and Joyce says, I remember seeing April Wine back in the mid-'70s. The most shocking thing I remember was drummer Jerry Mercer's bald head. That was a first in rock scene since most musicians had very long hair at the time. It was unusual. I thought that guy was some kind of weird biker dude who was mean, and it was so far from the truth. And his drum solo is amazing. Love that guy.
Oh yeah. What's the expression? Can't judge a book by its cover, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to tell you a story. One time in California, me and I think it was Steve took our rental cars and went out to the airport in this small town and practiced doing reverse bootleg turns in the rental cars. For hours at a time. backing up doing, like 30 miles an hour, then slamming on the brakes and flipping the wheel over and hitting the gas at the same time in these Dodge Diplomats,
Doing donuts. No kidding.
And we used to play bumper cars and we'd hit each other. One time we thought the guys were in the car in front of us was them, and we hit the car. It was the same car, but it wasn't them. The people kind of said, "What are you guys doing?"
Oh, I can imagine some of the stories you could tell us. Let me read one more email. Like I say, they keep coming in, but we only have so much time. This one's from Greg, and Greg says, thank you so much. Thank you very much to Brian, Miles, and Jerry for the amazing, great commercial music that you guys wrote in the 70s and 80s. The music then meant something with great lyrics, amazing guitar riffs, and melodies. That is when music was music, and I have to agree with Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, and Bonnie, too. Yeah, it's... we had fun doing it, and you know what? We got to do what we wanted to do, and we're still doing it, God willing. And the creek don't rise. We get over this COVID, and we get back at it. And so many people have taken up playing instruments during this pandemic that it's going to be real interesting to see where this goes musically with people and bands and styles of music when this is all over.
Absolutely. And you're not the first person to say that on the show. That's so true. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I do know that we are certainly missing live shows. That's for sure.
When they come back and when people are trusting to go out, to a mass event, it's going to be a lot of fun, just like it was after the Spanish flu in 1918. We had the Roaring 20s. And oddly enough, we're in the 20s again.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just crazy times, that's for sure. But hopefully it'll be powerful when all the musicians get back on stage. It'll be a powerful thing, and lots of people will get out and see live shows again. I'm sure that's going to happen sooner than later, I'm hoping. But there's a segment of the show I like to do, Brian, called, Well, Gary, what do you think?
What do I think? Do we have another hour? No. Bri, as usual, man, just like a lot of the emailers said, the music is phenomenal. I always loved your stuff. It was written so well, and the harmonies of everything from the guitars to the vocals to the melody lines, such commercial ability. And April Wine has always been one of my favorite bands, and I still love you guys to this day. What else can I say?
Oh, thank you. We gave it our best, and we still do. We have one speed, and that's on.
For sure.
And now when I drive down the street and hear Sign of the Gypsy Queen 3 times a day, I'll know the story behind it all. So that's
it's going to make the song sound different,
Oh, for sure.
I know when I've met people that I love their song, what they do, and I've got to know them or met them once, all of a sudden everything sounds different because I have a more personal contact with that person and that song now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Brian, can I ask you one quick question, really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where's the fire bell? Does anyone, if you guys, now when you tour or play gigs, does someone take that with you? Is that in a road case somewhere? Do you use that bell or do you use a recording? And if you use a recording of it, who's got the actual bell still? Does someone still have it?
No, we travel with the bell.
Wow.
You've got to see the red bell. Sometimes I'll sneak up beside Roy, his drum solo, or when we're not playing a song, and rap the bell, and when you start looking and have them jump.
That's fantastic.
That's so
yep.
Well, Brian, I bet you've had such an amazing career, and still more tunes for you to play live, bud. What an honor to have you on our 50th radio show here this evening, Brian Greenway. I really respect April Wine, and I've had Jim Henman, Miles, and now you on the show. Bruce Dixon was on the show. It's just an absolute pleasure to have you guys on our radio show and listen to the wonderful stories that you guys
I bet a lot of them are the same, eh?
Well, no, not really. The stories weren't the same. No, everybody had a different story. So that's kind of cool. But I really, like I said, respect April Wine, and like now, like you say, that when I hear an April Wine song, it just I brings back the memories of having the April Wine members on the show and the stories that they told. So thank you so much for being here, Brian. We're going to follow your progress. If April Wine gets back to rocking and rolling, we're going to come out and see you guys and enjoy the party for sure. Thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome, Barry and Gary. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. And to the listener, I say thank you for being here, and always dance and sing, and let the music bring your soul to the surface for all the world to see. Until next time, have a shuffle your feet kind of week, and good night. You've been listening to This House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.